My mom, who I do not live with, but she calls me just about every night to throw punches at me, is a very hardcore charismatic. We were raised in an Assemblies of God church, and so I have to deal with that just about nightly, her calls.
Okay.
The latest one, I was fine when she was attacking Steven Anderson and whatever. I'd say, yeah, he's crazy. I don't know any of that yet. But last night she called me and asked about, she said it was Apologia Church.
Uh-oh.
That's what she called it. And as soon as she called it a church, I realized who she had found.
Now, do you think maybe you've called the right place right now?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Why not?
I'm just simply saying you have half the eldership of Apologia Church.
That's right.
On the phone with you
we can
right
answer
now.
all the questions.
I think we're good. We can get Luke and Zach on the phone if we need to make it the whole group. So we're good.
All right, I already know what they'll say though.
Good. You already have their knowledge imparted to you, so you can answer for them.
Okay.
I'm fine with dealing with her, and actually the rest of my close family are the same. A while back, we hold a service here Sunday where we meet. I'm forced to attend and listen. They asked me to lead a Wednesday night service here. I'm in no shape to do that, but I did it anyway. I preached on the Trinity, which I know none of them understand. Because of their upbringing. They've never really had to deal with that. And somewhere along there, I gave away, somehow, my Reformed theology. I don't know where they caught on to it, at what point in the sermon I gave it away, but I did. And so, ever since then, I've been dealing with phone calls. Last night, she called me. She listened to Brother Jeff's a recent sermon, but every sermon that you post about the tribulation, you cover pretty much the same ground, and you make perfect sense to me every time, mainly Matthew 24. I love reading that, as in the days of Noah. It's clearly, I won't get into it, but it's amazing how they've changed that to be good, if you know what I'm talking about.
Right, no, exactly, yes.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that they've changed that to be taken away as a good thing. But anyway, she brought up 1 Corinthians 13:10. I am a cessationist myself. She knows that. That was probably the biggest blow to her, because she is holding on to traditions that were ingrained in us, in her as a child and in me as a child, from our grandparents, my grandparents. But she brought up 1 Corinthians 13:10. Obviously, that when that is which is perfect comes. I don't know about heart in every translation, but
right.
Essentially she brings that up to say that I'm wrong. It's basically a shouting match, that I'm wrong about everything that I've said recently. I try not to talk about it much with her, but basically I've tried to explain what biblical apostleship is, how we don't have them today, how it's impossible, how prophecy, what that means, how that doesn't happen today. And she loves Perry Stone and she loves Jonathan Cahn, and when I talk about this, I'm basically crapping on her idols. I mean, so but it's hard. But what?
Well, just a couple things. Well, John. So the main thing she didn't like about Apologia was the eschatology and Jeff's preaching from Matthew 24, or was there something more?
She watched maybe 10 minutes of a sermon he put up either yesterday or the day before.
That's not even the introduction for Jeff.
I know. But
now I'm into point 2 by then, but no. Well, no.
I'm not saying she watched the first 10 minutes. She watched overall. Maybe 10. She watched enough to hear him say Dr. White. So then she knew Dr. White. She called me last night. I've mentioned your name. So she called me last night and said, "Is this the Dr. White that you're listening to?"
The one that he was talking about, they're all connected. It's a conspiracy.
Exactly, it's a huge conspiracy. This guy's connected to Apologia, and this is where you're getting all your crap from. But that specific, I mean, I've talked about you guys with other people in the family. My uncle is a little bit more open-minded. I'm trying to reach him, and when I say I'm trying to reach him, it feels arrogant to me to say that, but I feel like I'm right and they're wrong, and I don't really know how else to.
I understand.
To put that. But,
well, look, John. Family situations can be. This whole area is highly emotional, and then when you put it into the context of family, and when you put it into the context of you were once here and now you're over there, there is automatically a self-defense mechanism that kicks in, because what the person's hearing you saying is they are wrong, you are right, and so they bring up all the family stuff and everything else, and it can be extremely difficult. It can be so complicated that in many times I've seen people outside the family be able to get much more distance as far as being able to get somewhere than interfamilial conversations, unfortunately. But in light of that, then I would, my suggestion would always be that let's use, I'm not sure which sermon it was, but just thinking about Sunday's sermon with Jeff, he got to the end of the sermon, and he's like, okay, so what does this all mean? He had been just talking about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and so on and so forth. Do we all just take this information and leave here and go, oh, that's cool, now I can throw this at some Tim LaHaye fan or something like that? No, he's talking about God's promises, and he's talking about God's faithfulness. And one of the main arguments through this whole sermon series, sorry to be summarizing this for you, brother, but I'm sitting out there listening.
I'm making sure it's okay. Good. Yeah. I'm doing all right. It's working. It's working.
Yeah, he's listening. Oh no, I thought he was sleeping during all this. Oh no, he's actually listening.
And by the way, it's not fair that I have to preach sermons to Dr. White at church. Like, it's weird. Like, you understand what kind of pressure that is to have to teach for Dr.
And
White
I
in your
sit
sermon?
down front so you can see me very clearly.
Like, you're putting together sermons and you're like, okay, and this doesn't teach the church, and this person knows nothing about the Bible or eschatology. Okay, but Dr. White's there, so.
But Jeff is handling it really well.
You want to shine, but you don't want to go over anybody's head.
That's right.
That's right. So the point is, he made one of the points he's made throughout the series he's been doing in Matthew chapter 24. This is important stuff because this demonstrates that Jesus was a true prophet. He was not a false prophet, that the arguments that have been constantly used, that Jesus got it wrong, just simply miss the historical reality. And so go toward the end of the sermon, and maybe the next time she calls, what you can do is you can say, okay, Mom, I'm sorry you don't like what he said there, but did you hear what he said at the end? Could we agree that it's important that we be really focused on the fact that Jesus was a true prophet and that things happened that he said were going to happen? Isn't it good that we can emphasize that God's promises are true and that he's going to be faithful to accomplish the things that he's said that he's going to accomplish? In other words, what I'm saying is I'm not just simply saying just avoid the conflict. It just sounds like it's conflict for the sake of conflict, which doesn't really get you anywhere.
Oh, it is. So she doesn't understand the role of the miracles. She doesn't understand the role of the prophecy, the reason he said it. She assumes it was all for us.
Right, I understand.
All the miracles are for us.
I understand. I get it, and your task is going to be to find some way, respectfully, because you're to honor your father and your mother, gracefully, because if you're representing a message of grace, then you can't become ungracious in the presentation of that message, to find some way of turning her toward the positive truths without necessarily getting all bogged down in all the negative stuff. I know that is not always possible, but it's got to be your goal. That's what you got to be working toward. And it's as if she's arguing for the sake of her tradition. For what?
Yeah, of course.
What
we were raised on. That's where it's
but see, let me John, let me just tell you a story. And this is the one story that I remember, but I've had somebody else tell me that I did almost the exact same thing to them. But there have been a number of times in my life when someone knew they were going to be meeting with me and they decided they wanted to have a little debate with me about some element of theology. And when we got together, I wouldn't debate them. And I sort of blew them off. And I basically said, well, if you want to go that direction, but just remember, and I just gave them something positive. And they walked away really disappointed because they're all geared up for this big debate, and they're all deflated. Yeah. And then they start thinking about what I said, and eventually they're like, oh, man, he was right. Oh. And it ended up, in both instances, it ended up changing the entire paradigm of their theology. And it wasn't because I blasted them in a debate. It was actually because I sort of blew them off and then in the process gave them one thing that they didn't expect that they were going to get. So what I'm saying is don't give up on the possibility that you might have that one conversation where something that you don't expect was really important ends up being the one thing that gets her thinking. But if the best thing I can say is be prayerful. Be prayerful when you expect the phone call to come. Always be respectful. She's your mom, and if it gets to the point where it's starting to really strain your relationship, then just say let's not discuss this and pray God will bring somebody else into your life.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, I think that, and this is one thing I always say to people pastorally at Apologia, as this issue comes up quite often, like I'm having a conversation with my boss or my mom, my sister, is that we need to consider different contexts as we're preaching the gospel and defending the faith. So there's a difference between how I'm going to handle a person who I meet in the line at Starbucks and sees that I'm carrying a Bible. They're asking questions. We have a conversation. I say, hey, I'll meet you here tomorrow. We have a conversation again tomorrow. I have moments ahead of me with this person, and this isn't in front of an abortion clinic.
Right.
So if I'm standing in front of the abortion clinic and I know that I have 15 seconds from door to door, from when the mom comes out of the door to when she goes in to kill her child, I am handling that very, very differently because I have 15 seconds to save this child's life. I've got to tell her, don't murder your child. This is Christ. He'll forgive you. Turn to him and live, and will help you. Like 15 seconds, and I'm pleading for the life of a child. And I will call it murder. I mean, I'm not, I'm cautious about how I do that at Starbucks, right? But I'm going to be like...
you don't want your latte poisoned.
For example, Gary DeMar and I, we filmed something that's going to go up in Apologia Studio soon. Last week, we filmed at Benihana. We took a whole table up. We filmed this conversation at Benihana. They're, making food on the table, and we're having a conversation. I waited until... Listen, this is the truth. I waited until our chef left the table before I started talking about abortion.
Yeah, knives.
That's so sweet of you.
Yeah. So it's just context. And when I have a conversation with a family member, I need to realize, look, I've got Thanksgiving and Christmas and birthdays and marriages with this person. I've got maybe some time. It doesn't mean I'm going to compromise. Right. It means I'm going to be wise about how I actually present this stuff and recognize this is a family relationship. This person's not going anywhere. I have to see them again. I can have more time.
In God's providence. I mean,
in God's providence.
Things can change.
I may not need to blitz this person with everything all at once and then completely divide the relationship and never get another opportunity again. And I need to be wise about how I do that. And so just be careful. And I would say also, I would just drop little seeds and remember this crucial thing. How hard was it for me to come out of this partially Arminian perspective to Reformed theology?
Right.
It took some work, and it took some argument and some sleepless nights and some moments of sweat and tears. And it was. I remember the moment I walked out of my bedroom to tell Candy that I'm definitely a Calvinist, was after a long time of study and work. And I remember bursting out of the room after reading Bettner's Predestination and the list there, and I was like, "That's it. I'm a Calvinist." And she's like, "What?" I'm like, I guess I always have been. I was just confused. I'm definitely a Calvinist." She's like, "Oh, wow." And the same thing for me with the issue of eschatology. It took work. So I need to make sure that every person is leaving a nasty comment at Apologia Studios. I'm always aware that this person may come back a year from now or 2 years from now and say, you know what? Because I've had it happen so many times now I've lost count. Jeff, I hated you. I was so angry with you. And then it was that one verse that changed my mind. And so I'm just always ready for that, and I'm always aware that it may take this person some time. I've got to be patient and let God do his work with his truth.
I can't tell you how many times someone has come up to me, people now in ministry in Reformed churches, and they said it was the George Bryson debate on the Bible Answer Man. They said, I was driving along, I was screaming at the radio, I hated you. I couldn't believe what you were saying. And then I had to keep reading, and every time I'd read my Bible, I'd see it there, and eventually, and you know, it took sometimes years.
This bald devil.
Yeah, something like that. I'm sure there was some real nice things along the line. Yeah, so
you have a critical look about you.
A critical look.
I don't know what it is.
Oh, wow.
I'm liking his beard, though. Look at that good beard coming in around.
Critical look.
It's I don't know critical. I don't know critical. Crisp, sharp.
Crisp.
But I don't know.
Piercing.
Let me ask you.
Piercing.
Where do you draw the line between? Like I'm sitting here listening to her talk to other people in the family. I know what she's saying is not biblical. I know I can go to Scripture.
Yeah, but...
And I can look at it. Am I lying? Am I supposed to say something? Or is it okay after a year and a half of this to say she's going to have to come to it on her own? Or is that arrogant of me to say? I don't even know where to go from that point.
Everybody has to make that decision prayerfully, always with great patience and grace, but there has to come a time. There has to come a time where you say, I've said everything that can be said. If the Lord's going to do something else here, he's going to have to bring somebody else to do it. I can think of numerous situations in my own life where I was far more patient with someone. Believe it or not, I was far more patient with someone than another Christian would have been with that same person. And then knowing that person, I know there are people that they were so much more patient with somebody than I would have been. So that's why there's a body. You just got to be transparent before the Lord. It's your mom. Always be there for her. Always love her. It doesn't mean you always have to debate her on theology. You know, even if she goads you to do it. So as long as she knows that you're where you stand and that you're ready when she's ready, but you don't have to let it absolutely destroy your situation either. So, okay, man.
I appreciate it.